100%.
All right, you ready to get to our next caller?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go.
All right, this one's from Illinois, like myself. Former Catholic, now Satanist view. I hope I'm reading that right. View on the afterlife. Kate, you are on with Ethan and Richard. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
I am doing very good, thank you.
Yeah, very well, thank you.
So you used to be a Catholic and now you're a Satanist?
Yeah. I raised Catholic, pretty strict Roman Catholic on both sides of my family. And when I was 18, I left the church, roamed around as an atheist for a while, and just a couple years ago, found myself really drawn to the Satanic Temple. So,
which Satanic Temple? Is it the Church of...
The Satanic Temple that's not the Church of Satan, that's Levian Satanism. Lucian Greaves is the spokesperson for the Satanic
dude, that
Temple.
dude's awesome.
Yeah, I know, right? I love him.
Yeah, same. He's an intense dude, but he's really smart.
He's very well written, well spoken.
Yes.
He's a very smart individual, and he is making some great strides in modern day Satanism. So
absolutely. So for the record, though, just for everybody listening, just Satanists don't actually believe in the devil or anything supernatural. Is that accurate?
Correct. Well, yes. And Satan and the devil are actually two completely different entities or deities in the Bible. Satan is, to us, Satan is the embodiment of the rebel against all tyranny. He is the one who, like, if we were going to put him in the Bible, when God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, Satan stood up and said, yo, bit much, bro. You know, like, maybe we want to simmer down. So he's the one who kind of just brings checks and balances to ultimate power, I guess.
So then,
and that's who we, you
know. It said you wanted to talk about the afterlife. Do you believe there is an afterlife?
The term afterlife is a pretty broad term, but I believe that if there is an afterlife, it begins when we are reborn, when our soul or consciousness is reassigned to a new human vessel. As far as our memory or cognitive awareness of such, that dies with our human brain when we die. I do believe that, you know, the science is telling us that when a person dies, they lose 6 to 8 ounces of weight, of matter. It has to go somewhere. And personally, I like Tesla's theory that we are all, you know, atoms, that we all have a nucleus, we all have electrons and protons that make up who we are. And maybe upon death, it's like our own version of fission.
So if
some of us goes and becomes the Northern Lights, or but as far as being consciously aware of what we do after death, no, I don't believe in that.
Okay, so you do believe in a supernatural soul. Is that accurate?
Yes, I do.
Okay. If we're losing, and I don't know whether that's true or not, but if we're losing weight, then that would mean that the soul is weighted and we should be able to find it in the human body, correct?
Correct. That's what one would think. There's been several studies, people who have signed up for this particular subject to see if what happens at the exact moment the human body gives out and dies. And in several of the clinical trials, which they went on years ago, it was 6 to 8, sometimes 10 ounces of just weight that disappeared from the human body, and the doctors are baffled. They don't know where it goes.
As far as I'm aware, the human body, there is not a moment where the human body dies. Death is a process. And sometimes it's very kind of difficult, even for the experts, to kind of nail that point at which that person has passed on. But I'm more interested, rather than the weight thing, I'm more interested in what you think the mechanism of this thing passing on is, and more importantly for me, why it has to be a soul, because there are religions out there that believe that in rebirth that don't believe in a soul. So first of all, what do you think the soul is? And why do you think the soul is reborn? And then what do you think the mechanism is of that?
That's a very good question. Like a lot of interesting things or very effective things in life, there's, theories are just that, but electricity itself is a theory. Yet here we all are, high voltage linemen will admit to you that they don't know how it works or why it works. They just know that it does. So in my opinion, I think the soul is a religious term. Consciousness is what science is using for it. And it's kind of the way that they're bridging the gap between science and religion.
But a soul and consciousness aren't the same thing.
Really bad word.
A soul and consciousness on the same kind of, they're not weighed in the same way. We know relatively about a consciousness. We don't have all the answers, but we have, it's quite a well studied area. Whereas the soul is, and there are lots of different concepts about it. There are lots of different ideas about it. As I've said, some religions don't even believe there is a soul as such. So it's not on an equal footing. It's not like there is consciousness here and soul here, and then there's kind of a bridge between them. Sorry, I just wanted your opinion on that.
But no, in my opinion, they're the same thing.
Why?
So why, why do you think there's more than, is it just the weight of this study you're talking about, the weight change after death, that has convinced you a soul exists? Or what other reasons do you have to believe that one exists?
That's a good question too. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with when you, over the years, I've met people or had encounters with people that can't be explained. And other than, I must have known them in a previous life or something along those lines. It wasn't until about 2 years ago that I ever put any thought into like actual past lives. And, a situation occurred where someone hit me with some information out of nowhere, and I had a very strong vision, hallucination, whatever you'd like to call it. And without any leading information from this person, I nailed exactly where he thought he knew me from. And that was really interesting to me. And that really, I think, kind of put me on the track of, okay, there has to be something to this. Because growing up, everyone always told me I had an old soul or whatever. I've always had experiences with the paranormal. They were never paranormal to me. Communicating with the dead and that kind of stuff, I don't set out to do that. But when it's necessary, they do communicate with me. And it's not very often.
Oh, this is going in a whole nother direction.
Yeah, because I'm getting really excited there.
I know. Well, I'm sorry. And that's why I had a hard time narrowing down where to go with what subject or whatever. I had my first experience when I was 4. And I never, even though, I told my mom, this is what happened. And she said, no, it didn't. Like, you were there and I told you when it happened, and she gave me those mom eyes where they basically say your full name with just their eyes. And I'm like, she's, no, you didn't. I'm like, bullcrap. I remember telling you. And it was, I never doubted myself. And throughout my very young years, a couple more things happened, and
May
I've always just kind of been tuned in.
may I ask a question?
I hate to be so vague. Yes,
Um,
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So, so for me, I want my beliefs to conform to reality as best as possible. And therefore, I
Sure.
want anything I believe to be testable. So with some of the claims you're making, can any of them be tested? And how could we go about doing that? Like, how could we
Mhm.
accurately test you communicating with the dead? Like, can you communicate with someone right now for me? How does it work?
Mm. That's a good question. I haven't had any communications come through in a while, but since COVID, I kind of shut that part off. The internet and the tension in the country really did a number on people who operate on this kind of frequency. It was really hard to see the forest through the trees, so I kind of shut that part off. Some of the things I do have, a lot of my communication actually is done through Messenger, and I keep them all. So I had a case of a young woman who contacted me. She wanted to know if I could speak to her brother, and I said, "Well, I can teach you. I don't conjure. I don't believe in that."
Can I interrupt just one
but
second?
as a
Do you
family
mind if I
member-
interrupt? Sorry,
Go on.
rather than giving this kind of an anecdotal account, and I don't wish to appear rude. It's not that I'm not interested, but I want to get to the kind of, as we're saying, Yorkshire meat and tatties of it. I want to like look at the mechanisms as to how it works, as rather than the stories of what has happened while you're doing it. I want to look at the mechanisms to see if we can like spot flaws in thinking or flaws in epistemology as to what's happening. For example, when you were talking about your stories from the childhood, we know that like memory anyway is not particularly good, and especially early childhood memory is really unreliable.
Exactly.
So we can cast a doubt onto. I'm not disputing that you've had those that you truly believe in those experiences. I'm not calling you a liar. I genuinely believe you think you've had those experiences, but we can't as Ethan was asking about, can we test it? That's not a reliable test just to say, well, I am sure that I remember, because lots of people are sure that they remember things and then they're later shown to be incorrect. So let's dig into the mechanism of how this thing works and like see if we can unravel how it works rather than having an anecdotal account of what's happened during it working.
So I guess to summarize what Richard's saying is like, how can we test any of this? Is that accurate, Richard?
That's a very quick way of saying what I've just said in 3 minutes.
Like, okay, how could we test
I
whether
don't-
a soul's real or not, or whether you are, communicating with the dead? Like, because to me, what would convince me is if your way of communicating with the dead was equivalent to like a radio station, where it's just clear, concise, and consistently back and forth. Does it work like that?
It doesn't. It really doesn't. And sometimes it's an all around kind of feeling the situation. That's the only way I can really provide any sort of evidence is with the anecdotes and the stories, and
but anecdotes aren't evidence.
The stranger side.
An anecdote
No,
isn't an
not.
evidence. We know, for example, we know that, and again, I'm not suggesting this is you by any means, so please don't think I am, but we know that people can lie. We know people can be convinced of things that aren't true. So with both of those things, that discounts anecdotes of being evidence. So other than like kind of an anecdote or personal experience, which we know can be flawed because we've got bad brains and we're not particularly good at remembering things accurately. What is there that there must be something there other than these things that we know are unreliable that convinces you that this is true? And what is it that convinces you that it is true? What kind of mechanism is there that we can get into and unravel and investigate?
I really don't think I can answer that, honestly. Because
so if you can't answer that, why do you believe it?
Set out to do.
Why is it that you're convinced by it
That's
if
fair.
the only things that convince you are things that we know are unreliable? Isn't it possible that what you actually think you're experiencing isn't the case?
I would say that if I didn't have a record of it, with timestamps and literally no way for me to know this information that I give people when they come to me for answers. And as far as, I mean, I know when to get involved because of how my body responds. When I was 4, my grandfather died. I didn't know he had died. I felt a door slam kind of feeling in my chest, like a percussion. And it went all the way through my body. I looked at my mother and said, "Grandpa's gone." And she looked at me like I was weird because 4-year-olds are weird. And she, you know, I specifically remember it. I have brought it up since then. 35 minutes later, we get a phone call that my grandfather had died. I didn't know what death was.
I'm sorry.
I didn't think anything of it until I saw the response of my aunt when she came over in tears. "Grandpa, you know, Art's dead, Art's dead." So 7 months later, when I felt the door slam in my chest again, all I could do was sob. I didn't know who it was, but I knew somebody had died. It was my other grandfather.
If I could interject real quick, are you able to do this for us, like a reading for either me or him, or communicate with someone from the dead? If there is someone I'm thinking of, could you communicate with them?
I honestly don't know on the spot or being asked. I've never done it that way before.
Okay.
It would be a experiment for both sides, I guess.
Well, we do have to wrap up in a moment, but I would maybe think it over and let me know. I know you and I are connected on Messenger. Whether it be privately or, it can be recorded. If you're able to do that, there is someone I would like you to communicate with, if you're open to that.
Sure.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Richard.
I would love to.
Just before you go, thank you for calling in. And I'm sorry for pushing you, but I'm pushing you because I'm really interested. And you're the kind of person who I would love to call back in every single time I'm on and go down another route with you, because you've got so much interesting stuff to say. And I'm really interested. So I don't want to seem like I was coming at you heavy. That was only because I want to get into these things because I'm really interested in what you've got to say.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate all the time you guys have given me. I wish I could have had better answers when it came to that. That was one of the things I've been
not knowing is not a problem.
Prove that these things are real, and the only way I can do it is through a digital record at this point. But yeah, I'm definitely got my brain going now, and how I can prove this in the moment, I guess, is
think
I'm looking for.
more about that, how it can be proven and tested. And I would love to, hear back from you or follow back up with you, if that's okay.
I appreciate that very much. And yes, definitely. I will definitely call in again.
Awesome. Kate, thank you so much for your time today.
Get a hold of you through Facebook.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm enjoying your show immensely.
Well, good. I'm happy to hear that. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you. You too.